right, good evening, everyone. TGT Media is an entertainment industry interview podcast where we interview the creative people from the entertainment industry. And, of course, I'm your host, Kurt. We are starting off March, I can't believe it's March already, it's crazy, with Cosplay Month, because cosplayers have been on the show in the past, and they are extremely talented. They're very upbeat and bright in what they create, as well as very energetic. So that's the type of vibe I wanted to bring to this show, because we are joined today by... I should have asked this before we even got started. We're joined by Fawn, who also runs a cosplay company called
Kojika.
Thank you, Kojika. This is the one thing I normally do in the green room. I just jumped right into it, but hey, that's what happens here. But how are you doing today, Fawn? And it's a beautiful costume of Leafa there from Sword Art Online.
I'm doing fine. What about you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for asking. And I was actually very pleased that you got dressed up as Lyfa from Sword Art Online, because that's an anime and a manga that I definitely truly love, and I'm glad to see that you look exactly like her.
Yeah, when I saw that character, I just had to cosplay her.
Now, cosplay is, for those that don't know, it's the ability to create costumes, to really fall in love with the character that you're passionate about, and to, kind of inhabit that character in a almost like a real world setting.
That's a very interesting way of putting it. I like it.
Well, that's how I see it. But why did you get into cosplay?
Actually, it's kind of funny because it was my mother who got me into cosplay back in 2000, or actually even before 2002, because that was my first anime con. Back in 2000, that was probably around the time we used to do a bunch of Pokemon League events. And my mother thought it would be cute if me and my two sisters dressed up as Pokemon characters to these card game events. And I was Misty or Kasumi. My older sister was Jessie or Musashimi. And then my little sister was Officer Jenny. And we'd go to all these events, and we'd never get to do the tournament because everybody would be stopping us for pictures.
Well, that's definitely interesting. There's so many conventions nowadays, especially... it's a lot more popular. It's a lot more widespread. There's also a huge cosplay fandom as well.
Oh yeah, it's a really nice fandom. Well, as long as you stay within certain areas.
Well, we may touch upon the dark side of cosplay later on, but when you first started dressing up in the Pokemon characters as well, was that something that you thought, I could really see myself doing this as I get older, maybe creating my own costumes?
It was one of those things that it was kind of, I was like 10 at the time, so I didn't really think too much about it. It was really fun. It was a totally different feel than what I was used to. I had been in dance and stuff for years, so costuming wasn't something odd for me, and like wearing wigs and things like that. So it was just kind of a different feel though, because it was one of those cases where it went from being something that was a rare occurrence to more of a norm. And I got belittled a lot about it when I was younger, because wearing Misty to middle school was always a great idea. But it was kind of like the fan base outside it, like when you were in the fan base, it was just such a great experience in there, and everybody was always so friendly. And I got some of my other friends involved in it too, and we didn't even know it was called cosplay until years later.
Now I've seen your website. Of course, you are on Facebook, and we'll get those links posted as well. And you've dressed up as a number of pretty interesting characters. How about you go through some of those as well?
Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. I have like over 40 costumes.
Which is crazy, but it's good.
Yeah, I've got another 6 I'm adding this year.
Really? Yeah. So you're not the type of cosplayer that just takes a single costume to a convention. You're like the ones that get 2 or 3 for a weekend?
I usually do 3 in a weekend. The conventions that I don't like, because I sell art at conventions, which is how I afford them. Nice. But the ones that I don't sell art at, the very few, I tend to be more likely to take multiples. And I actually wasn't originally supposed to sell art at Anime Central this year, and now I am. So I'm kind of I've got 6 costumes booked plus a table. So I don't know how that's going to work. It's going to be kind of interesting.
Well, Anime Central is a great convention as well. I've interviewed a few of them in the past too. They're just so vibrant in what they love doing with this type of convention.
That was my first convention back in '02, and I mean it's about an hour from where I live, so it's a great convention. I've been back there every single year.
Now, has a lot changed in the 10 years since you've been going?
Yeah, it's not even really always noticeable things. There's like subtle differences. I mean, obviously it's grown quite phenomenally since when I first started going. And I mean, I remember my first year going, I was dressed as Kagome from Inuyasha, and everybody was asking me if I was Sailor Jupiter. It was kind of one of those, like, the amount of anime people knew was just so minimal. And now, I mean, I take obscure cosplay that have literally never been recognized at another convention, including Otakon, and they get recognized at ASIN now. And it's kind of a nice feel. And then, of course, because it's a really big con, but it kind of still has a little of that small con feel to it. It's really weird to explain, but it's nice. And of course, I've always, like, for me, Midwest cons are great because I don't have to travel like 13 hours to them. I have a couple cons that I go to like 16-hour drives and stuff too. I like the ones where I'm only doing like an hour or two.
Well, talk about the first time you started doing the convention circuit as a cosplayer then, because that's got to be a little daunting, doing that yourself and creating the costumes. I mean, talk about a bit about that process that you go through.
Well, I mean, of course, for like the first couple years I was doing conventions, I didn't actually make my own costumes. It was my mother. Yeah, because she was the one who was like, we should go to, in fact, our first ASIN was back in like the November before it happened. I was down in the basement with like 4 of my friends. We were watching something, and she comes down and she's all like, what are you guys doing in May? And of course, we have no idea. And she's like, well, you guys, you're going to keep your schedule free, and we're going to ASIN, and I'm making Inuyasha costumes for all of you. And she seriously made Inuyasha costumes for everyone. I was Kagome, my older sister Inuyasha, my little sister was Sango, 6-foot boomerang and all. One of my friends was Miroku, another friend was Kikyo, another was Sesshomaru, full armor and everything. And then my mother went as Kagura, and later on we added a shippo even from a boy we babysat. So she kind of went a little nuts, and it was one of those, seeing her do the process, and because I had seen her do costumes for years because of dance and stuff, but seeing her do the process was kind of, it got me really into it. And of course, after that, like the next year and stuff, when we started adding costumes, I started getting into more and more until, finally got to the point where she was getting sick and tired of me saying, I want to do like 3 costumes in a year. Yeah, 3 sounds so small now. And she's just like, yeah, you're making it yourself.
Well, talk about the very first costume that you personally made by hand then.
I'm trying to think what my first one was, that, because the thing is, there were a lot of ones where I did bits and pieces of them. I think the first one I did entirely by hand was probably Dorothy from Mare back in like 2004, maybe. I did 2 different versions of her. The first one turned out horrible. It was her original outfit, which is like this black dress, and it's not that complex. I just had no idea what I was doing. But I had decided, because there was a convention coming out right around my birthday, that was my birthday present to myself. And it turned out really bad, and it was still fun, and nobody recognized me until actually like the next year when I went to Canada for a convention, go figure. Somebody recognized me there, and I was like, that was kind of fun. But I ended up switching later to a different version, which I actually could sew by then. It didn't help that, like, up until about literally 2 years ago in the summer, I didn't have a sewing machine, so I was doing everything by hand.
Oh, wow.
You don't want to do that.
Gotta be a little difficult. I mean, it still has that artistic handmade quality, obviously, but...
Oh, I was so proud of all of those, and now I'm looking back at them, and it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was so proud of this. Like, one of my favorite cosplay for a while was Phase from Star Ocean 4, because that's kind of a crazily detailed one, and that was all by hand. And I pulled it out for Youmacon last year because I love those floors, and they're great to take pictures of, like, sci-fi looking cosplay. And I was in tears of how bad it actually looks now, and I went over half of stuff. Like, I didn't have a lot of time, but I went over and like re-glued what was originally glued and stuff, and used better glue, and then what I could sew, because so much of it you can't sew without doing it by hand, re-stitched up. It looks a lot better, but I think that cosplay might actually finally have to retire.
Oh, that's a shame. when it comes to this type of creativity that you've been doing for so long, have you started mentoring other people in how to do this? Have you joined any cosplay making communities in terms of getting more ideas or different processes?
I mean, well, okay, I'm one of those people that, like, for some reason, whenever somebody's like, let's do a costume, I like to help them, especially when they're a friend who lives in the area. And especially when they're doing super obscure cosplay with me, that tends to get them to basically have them make their entire costume. But it gets to the point where certain people were kind of taking too much advantage of it. And I mean, I'm making them pay for their own materials, but I just didn't have the time. One of my friends that I used to do a lot of cosplay with, she doesn't really do it anymore. We'd always do like Luffy and Nami from One Piece. And I had to remake her Luffy shirt like 3 or 4 times, and I finally got to the point where I'm like, no, you're making it. So I taught her how to sew for that. And like when I have 9 versions of Nami, and she has like 7 of Luffy. So whenever we would be doing that, it was to the point where every cosplay, I got her to do a little more on it. And then I've literally had friends who just came over. I had one friend last year who wanted to do some boot covers. And I mean, I have a tutorial and stuff online for those, but he was having trouble following it and didn't own a sewing machine. So he came over and we spent the day and I taught him how to make boot covers because I figure, you know what, it's good practice for me to work on them again anyways. You can never have too much sewing practice. And now he knows how to make them. And I mean, they didn't turn out super, fantastic or anything, but for his first try, they were really good. They were better than my first try. And I'm sure he's just going to get better. I mean, I look at boot covers now and some of them are just like, oh my gosh. Like, actually, the ones for this cosplay, I need to redo them. I don't know what I was doing when I made them.
In terms of reference material, obviously the internet is a wealth of knowledge and information. But is there particular sites you go to, like maybe a DeviantArt or anything like that where you say, you know what, I'd like to try this version of a character I really love?
It always depends on what the cosplay is. For instance, I have 2 Saber, or actually I have 3 Saber from Fate's Day, the Fate's Day series now. 2 of them are both from Fate's Day Night, Fate's Day Unlimited Codes and Fate's Day Night. Both of those were a little different because I usually go with just picture references, but I was having trouble finding all the angles I really wanted. And also finding, like, for the shoes and stuff, I tend to get a base to build off of because I'm not going to try to make shoes from scratch yet. I'm not that good. And I was having the issues where I kept coming across like heels for Saber Lily. And then a friend of mine had a friend who happened to get the Saber Lily figure with like the gift variation, and she had heels in that version. So I literally made him take, like, this guy I don't even know. I'm just like, here, go take like all these angles of pictures. And so that one was based off of a figure. And actually I just did her swimsuit version for a swimsuit shoot we did earlier this year. We went to a hotel and played in their pool. It was pretty fun. Yeah, that one was the same thing where I found a couple reference pictures, but I was kind of doing a rushed job and stuff. And then I found a figure, and the top was a little different, and I actually had a top that worked for it already. So I'm like, I'm just going to use this and be like, yay, we're doing a figure version. But other than that, sometimes sometimes it comes down, I own a lot of figurines, and I try to get one of every character I cosplay, so I use that for references. If it's a video game character, I tend to try to get a hold of the guide if I can, or in the case of like Star Ocean 4 I got pretty lucky on because I made face for myself. I did Sarah for a friend, and then I helped another friend with Edge. I had a friend who kind of went insane and screen capped so much. Like, she screen capped seriously every scene of that game kind of thing. And so I literally just went to her and I was like, I'm wondering, do you have, screenshots I could get fades because I'm looking for some back shots and some different angles. And she sent me about 1,000 shots. It wasn't quite as bad for Sarah, thankfully. I only got like 200 for her, but it was still the whole thing. I was like, yeah, those are great. So those work really well. And when I was redoing some work on All from Star Ocean 3 a couple of years back, I just used that as an excuse to go back and play the video game. So, like that. And there are some that are more, if there's a kind of a widely accepted fan version of it too, or there's like a back of a costume, nobody really knows what it looks like, but everybody draws it in a fan version a certain way, I will use fan art. Actually, for Leafa, I ended up looking at a lot of fan art because I was having trouble finding pictures of her back. And I noticed early on that a lot of the fan arts had her jacket as a full piece in the back, and I was pretty sure that wasn't how it was supposed to be. And I finally managed to find some shots of her back after I found some fan art with it open. And I ended up kind of using more of the fan art in some ways for it. It still has like the big gaping hole in the back like hers is for her wings. But it was kind of, I was having some issues finding those angles. And then another cosplay we were doing from Sword Art Online later. I'm not doing it for myself. My older sister's going as Shinon from she comes in way later and she's not in the anime yet, but she comes in like the Gun Gale arc, and then she comes back in AOL, which is what Leafa, the arc Alpine that she's in. So she's doing that version of her to match me. Yeah, there's every reference we basically have of that costume is fan art. Because I have the novels and there's like one picture of her on the front of it and maybe one inside of it. And the rest was like, yeah, I'm just going to go to actually a Japanese fan art site and just Google and find everything I can on that character.
Well, the anime has a lot of back pictures as well, actually, of Leafa and her flying and all that other stuff.
It does, too. Yeah. The thing is, when I started making this, the anime really wasn't out. Well, I mean, it was, but she wasn't in there. I was trying to get this done before she came up in the anime, because actually, originally, when everybody was telling me how long the anime was, I didn't think they were going to go into ALO, so I thought it was okay. And then suddenly it was like, oh yeah, by the way, we're going into when Leafa comes in. I was like, great. I wanted to be, I'm kind of one of those weird people. Like, I don't have an issue with cosplaying popular things, but I don't like being a cosplayer that everybody else is cosplaying, and not because I'm, oh gosh, I don't want to match people. It's just, sometimes you see these really awesome cosplay and you're just like, yeah. So if you get out kind of first out of the way, it doesn't matter. Even if the ones look better after you, it's not as bad.
Is there any characters that, I mean, you've been doing this a while. Is there any characters that you actually want to try and cosplay that you haven't had time to create costumes for?
Well, I mean, I have quite a long wish list, and a lot of them have been getting pulled off this year. For instance, I've cosplayed every Star Ocean game except for Star Ocean Blues Fair, so I kept talking about how I was going to do that game this year, but I was having trouble deciding on a character. And then I had some friends vote, and they knocked it down to 3 characters. And then from there, it was like one of my friends took one character, and another friend took another. So I'm like, okay, I guess I get Celine, because I love all those characters in there. So I'm finally going to be able to complete my Star Ocean set. And then eventually I'd like to do Final Fantasy, because it's a big series, but I want to do Minerva for it. But I want to do like her full armor. So that's going to take a while to learn how to do that. And then me and a friend are talking about doing feminine forms of Iron Man and Captain America. And my actual goal for Iron Man, because I'd be the one who did the Iron Man, is to do a partial armor suit. But I'm still working and learning armor, and I don't think I'm quite up to that skill set yet. So we're going to do a more casual, just like cloth version of them for later this year, probably at Gen Con. We'll see how it goes.
So you're actually learning how to bend, like physically make the armor itself, or are you working with sheet metal, or?
Yeah, I'm not working with metal yet. So far, I'm mainly working with fiberglass, mainly fiberglass resin, but I've done some work with some of that. I'm a friend of mine who makes amazing props, Soy Nuts Production, he does a lot of his prop work with things like insulation foam and really thin wood and stuff, and he's given me some great tips on doing weaponry and even some armor, so I'm going to look at that. Usually for armor, what I use right now is I use a lot of craft foam, nice and cheap, and if you coat it with fiberglass resin, it's pretty stiff. Another one that I use that everybody's always really weirded out about is felt. You coat it with, 2 weeks worth of glue, though. It's not felt anymore. The plus side about using felt, though, that I always like is it really molds well to you, because, it's cloth initially, and even after you're done coating it, the inside still has that somewhat cloth feel to it, so it's not rough on your skin and things like that. When I did Mimaru from Hack Sign earlier last year, I had done that costume back in like 2003 and did a horrible job on it. But now that I learned how to do armor and stuff, I tried making it. And I did a pretty good job with some of it, but I was having issues with her hip armor, and I'll probably eventually redo them. But they're currently, giant sheets of felt. And they don't look like it, and they don't feel like it. And every time I tell people I have armor made out of felt, they always have to knock on it because they're like, it does not look like felt. But I actually got that tip from a cosplayer back at Anime Expo 2003. She was dressed as D-Lit from Record of Lodos War, and I absolutely loved her armor, and I love that character. She's one of the ones that's on my wish list to eventually do, and she's got like a whole chest plate of armor, and the girl was really friendly, and when we asked her what her armor was made out of, and she said felt, we were like, what? And she pretty much, gave us like a walkthrough tutorial of it, and I tried it out for Albel a couple years, gosh, he's a pretty old costume, 06 now, and it worked really well for him the first time, and then my dad accidentally threw away the armor, and I redid them, and they weren't quite as good, but it's a really big learning process with working like things like that for me because I don't have a lot of friends who do armor, so it's kind of one of those shot in the dark.
Well, you've been going at this for a long time here. Now, in terms of skill sets for those that are besides a sewing machine, which apparently is definitely a necessity, what personal traits do you think you should have when creating cosplay?
Well, I mean, it's not like there's sorry, I apparently left the volume on my phone. But with cosplay, I don't think there's any necessarily skill sets that you need. Everybody's gonna have skill sets that are gonna be better for some things than others. Like I will admit, I have some hand deformities, so my cut lines are kind of questionable. But I found ways to get around it. I just cut extra to just fold under what I don't need, and yeah, I can sew in a straight line at least, even if I can't cut in a straight line. So it's a lot of things like that, and then I mean, I have friends who can't sew at all, but are really good with doing like prop work, and some people are really good at styling wigs. I was lucky in the wig department because I basically can sit on my real hair. I've always had long hair, so I'm used to dealing with hair. And I used to go to recitals and stuff with my sisters, and when I didn't make it in, I was always backstage doing their hair. So, I mean, it's one of those, I got lucky on that one, but there's still stuff that I couldn't do that I have some friends who do amazing work with. And it's always really nice to see how they do things like that. So, I mean, it's not that there's necessarily skill set needed, it's just, you have to find what you're good at, and sometimes you might have to bite a bullet and have somebody else do stuff for you. I'd like to try to do all of my stuff myself, and I know how people are like that because I'm one of those. I kind of will do everything myself, even if I screw it totally up, rather than have somebody help until I get it messed up, and then I have to go ask for help.
In terms of, I know there's a lot of people that make weaponry and all that other stuff. I know there's also very strict con rules as well when you can't bring live blades and all that other stuff here. For a character like Leafa, I mean, she has, I believe it's the rapier.
Yeah.
I think that would be an interesting, especially with the handle, with the guard and all that other stuff too. I mean, that type of material is necessary for a cosplayer. It kind of accents the costume.
I don't have her sword done yet. I haven't had a chance to work on it. I do kind of know what I'm going to do for it. It's a lot of pretend I know what I'm doing and see how it works. But yeah, with weaponry, you do have to be careful. Most of my sword weapons are made out of wood as a base. Some of them have, like, I'm trying to think if any of them have anything else in it, because I don't have that many swords active right now. I think they're all wood right now. In the past, I had helped some people make other swords that were different materials, and I'm supposed to eventually help a friend make another sword that we're going to try to do all out of fiberglass, so that's going to be fun. Yeah, she's going to have to spend like a week at my house, and we'll see how messy we get my basement and see how my friends like it. But it's a lot of learning, and then, so it's like, I like, wood is a nice, good staple. It can cut pretty easily. My dad, fortunately, has a very nice collection of saws, and even though my mom's kind of freaked out and doesn't really like me using them ever since I almost cut my thumb off, my dad's always like, "Hey, look, I got a new saw." He's always great about it. So, but so it's like there's stuff like that. I use a lot of craft foam and weaponry and stuff too. It all depends on time and things like that. And like I said, fiberglass resin is a great coating, and if not, glue, Mod Podge, which is like a thicker glue. And yeah, you just kind of get to the point where you just start coating everything and learning. And I mean, I had to make 4 costumes in a month once, which wasn't really fun because they all had weapons with them. And yeah, most of their weapons were pretty lame. So I'm like, I don't have time. So it's like craft foam tape glued to a piece of wood. There you go. There's your whatever it was, that kind of thing. But you also learn a lot that way.
Is there any cosplay outfits that you won't wear, or you won't try to make, I should say?
Well, it's not that I wouldn't try to make them. It's some of them, like I said, I just feel I've got the skills for them at this point, so they're kind of, future dreams. I'm a big sucker for armor, so I love like the full armor plate and stuff like that. I'm not quite ready to do full armor yet. Saber Lily was probably the most armor I've ever done, and I messed it up really badly. It was one of those cases where I have all these people I know who are like, your armor is great, and I'm like, no, I want to destroy it. It's in my opinion, it's just so bad. But I had started, with one material, didn't like how it looked, put another one on top of it. So by the end, I have like 4 different materials on it, and it's a lot heavier than it was supposed to be. And yeah, depending on how it's worn, sometimes it can pull pieces of the costume down. And luckily, I'm one of those people who wear stuff underneath, like shorts and, a top underneath, but it's still kind of awkward when you're walking around the con and your skirt's falling off. So you learn a lot that way, too. I also really don't like the really skimpy costumes. If I do characters like that, I kind of adapt crazy. Nami's a pretty bad one for that. She tends to be in a lot of bikini tops. And yeah, she doesn't wear, depending on her costume, she won't even wear decent bottoms. So we basically had a pact, me and the friend who did Luffy, that I would do a version of Nami that matched her as long as she picked, there was a version that I could adapt well. So like, make the top cover more, make them shorts instead of like bikini bottom kind of thing. Little things like that.
Now, you said you've gone to Anime Central. I heard Dragon Con. I've heard a few others as well. What's your normal convention circuit that you get to cosplay at?
It kind of varies greatly every year. Like, this year, next convention, which is in April, I'll be hitting my 100th convention. So I've been doing this for a while. But typically, I hit like, ASIN is a big staple. I've been doing Shudokan, which is my next convention. That one, this is only its third year, but I've been doing that one every year. I met the con chair and another con. They're very nice people. It's still a nice small con. It's in Lansing, Michigan, so it's only like 3 hours for me, so it's not too bad. And it's a nice area, and it's in that time of the year where it's usually warmer than you think it would be, so it's not like that bad to go outside and take pictures and things like that. Let's see what else. So after ASIN, that's May. I do Animazement a lot, which is Memorial Day weekend. The only year I did not do Animazement was the year I did Anime North up in Toronto. So eventually I'll go back to that one because I have people asking me back on it. It's just Animazement keeps getting these amazing guests, and I'm kind of compelled to go back there and drive 13 hours there instead of 12 hours to Toronto.
Well, you'd be passing me on the way up.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those. I've been there before, and it was a fun con. But we also have the issue now that I'm the only one who I normally go with who has a passport, so we'd have to work on that too. Let's see what else I have. So after Animazement, May, Otakon in Baltimore. That one's kind of far away. That's another 12 hours, a little shorter than Animazement, but it's the second largest anime convention in the U.S. and it's, gosh, gorgeous scenery, amazing guests. I love the people out there. It's a humongous con, and it does feel like a big con sometimes, but I still manage to find all the people I'm looking for there. So that's always a good thing, even if we forget to exchange numbers and things like that. Then after Otakon, I guess would be, so Anime Fest down in Dallas. That's my 16-hour one. I'm going to eventually move down to that area, so I keep going down there. But that's a con that I kept coming back to because the first year I did it was totally a whim thing, and I had so much fun, and it's just like, yeah, I'm just going to keep going back. Then Ramen Con is my next one now. This will be the third year of that one, too. That one is lovely. It's 5 minutes from my house. I don't even need a hotel room or anything. I run events for them, though, so I'm there till like 2 every morning, and then I'm back there at 8 to sell stuff. But it's a nice con. It's nice and small. Then I think the only other staple after that would be Youmacon, which is in Detroit, and that one's going on its 7th year, I believe. So it's kind of like, yeah, a lot of these cons I've been with them for the beginning. In the case of like Ramen Con, the con chair is somebody that I've known for a very long time. He was in kindergarten with my older sister kind of thing. And then Youmacon, the people there, I used to go to cons with them before they ran Youmacon. So, I mean, we've driven hours. Like, one of the people who now runs, like, live programming there, he drove 48 hours with us to Anime Expo back when it was in Anaheim, California. Oh, so, geez. Yeah, there are a lot of people that are good friends. And, you know, it's nice to see them running cons, and they're doing good jobs at it. And, of course, I tend to have a lot of the same friends who go in the same circle of conventions, too, so that helps.
What about any stories about meeting famous people, though?
Most of the famous people I've met are at least that, you know, are exciting to me, are always Japanese people. A couple years back at Animazement, they had Hiroaki Hirata, who is the voice of Sanji in One Piece, there, and I was waiting in one of his autograph lines, dressed as Nami. I had my back turned totally, and suddenly I just hear Sanji screaming out, "Nami Schwan!" from behind me. It was pretty awesome. And then, sure enough, a little later, when I was actually in there, because I was like third in line, luckily, I got his autograph, and he's sitting there talking to his translator because I had given, or talking to, like, the interpreter. I had given him a piece of art, and I had drawn Sanji with a little more definition than he normally has, and he's sitting there talking about it. He's like, "Oh gosh, I don't have abs like these," and it was really funny. And he realized I could understand him because later, when I was at a panel, he chased the translator away from us when he was talking. So he was a really fun one to meet.
Awesome. That's great. Is there anything that we haven't touched upon that you'd like to let your fans know, that those that are watching this here about cosplay, that I just happen to not think of?
I don't know. We covered so much.
Okay. What about the website that we can go and see all of your amazing costumes of the past 10 years?
Okay, I'll say right now, I currently only have my Facebook page up and running for it, which is Kojika Cosplay. Basically, Kojika is my name in Japanese. It means fawn. So when I was in Japan, a lot of people had trouble calling me fawn. So I was just like, just call me Kojika. All my friends back in the US do it. It's pretty bad. So that one worked. That works pretty well. Eventually, I have a website right now. It's called Darker Side of Destiny. Really lame name. It was from when I was like 12, and it originally started as like a fan site, so it was for like fan art, fan fiction, and things like that. But more recently, a couple years back, it's just become all convention pictures and events, things like that. And after talking about it with some people, I decided, instead of having it be the Darker Side of Destiny, which makes absolutely no sense now, I'm going to change it over to a website for that too. So that's going to be, and hopefully sometime later this year, I'm going to finally do that. Probably while I'm sitting at work and have free time, I'll just start doing the code for it.
Awesome stuff. Well, Fawn, it's been a true pleasure having you on the show, especially in a wonderful Leafa costume. And of course, as you know, you'll see the link on your podcast page. It's, of course, it's facebook.com// Kojika Cosplay. Very easy to get to, very easy to link to, and some amazing, wonderful costumes as well. And Fawn, truly thank you for coming on the show. I've had a wonderful time.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
And that ends this episode of TGT Media. Tune in next week or the week after. We have the Clown Prince of Crime, a Joker cosplayer out of I can't think of it exactly, but he's on the show. It's on my website. He does a great cosplay of Joker. He looks the part, very skinny. He has the amazing makeup. Apparently, he has the laugh as well. We'll see if he compares to a Mark Hamill too. So that ends this episode.